Dignitaries for Technical Session 1 to please come on the dais. Dr. Maya Gantayat Ma'am, Managing Director and Co-Founder, Ashwini Hospital. Dr. Deepak Mitra Sir, President AHPI, Odisha Chapter and Managing Director, Sun Hospital Limited. The session chairs for the Technical Session 1 and the speaker would be Shri S.K. Priyadarshi Sir, IPS, Commissioner of Police, Bhubaneswar, Kanak. The topic for this technical session would be violence against healthcare professional and legal updates.
I would like to just, before I ask Shri Priyadarshi to start his topic, if he permits, then I will just show a small clip of the great violence that happens against the healthcare workers. I talk this with emotion, with passion, and with sadness. We all think about helping the society at large, which we do it. But somehow, the healthcare professionals have been put aside in the schemes, and it is only concentrated on the society as a welfare society. The healthcare professionals also belong to the welfare of the schemes and the government and everything. Why should there be such a discrimination?
It's last week in Capital Hospital. Casualty. What happened? A patient was admitted in a very critical condition because any patient comes naturally. I don't have to reiterate. She was admitted in the emergency, some problem of oxygenation. Then all of a sudden, the sun caught hold of the collar of the doctor and pulled him, get ready, put the oxygen cylinder, put the oxygen mask in my mother's mouth. Another doctor who happens to be physically challenged, she was also misbehaved. The patient dies. We are informed, at least everyone whosoever are from Bhubaneswar will agree that we have tried to develop a system that within 15 minutes my PCR van at least reaches. My average time I have tried to establish is less than 15 minutes. Now what happened? The patient dies. We were very keen that we should take stern action against this gentleman who misbehaved with the doctors on duty. But what happened? The patient dies. We were perplexed. We had a predicament as to what to do. There is an emotional social issue vis-a-vis. There is an issue pertaining to law and order. It was a big question asked at me. Then I said, okay, let's serve him a notice because he has to ultimately do the kriya karma of his mother. This is something which is prevalent, starting from a public health center in the remotest part of the state to the best hospitals. I'm sorry to say, as ma'am rightly pointed out, Deepak sir and ma'am both have been victims of this violence against health professionals. Government, let me tell you very honestly, government was very keen to ensure that it gets stopped. I still remember during COVID, even the doctors were driven out of their house because they have been treating COVID patients. This was the state of affairs. I mean, honestly speaking, the community which rendered the greatest service to this earth were maltreated by society. I told during my speech that doctors are not God. Supreme Court, in one of its decisions, has very categorically told about this. It did not write doctors are not God, but you cannot. See, all of you must be knowing they used to go to consumer forum. Then consumer forum says, yes, there is a negligent act on the part of doctors. 15 lakhs granted, 14.86 lakhs granted. There are few decisions wherein the Supreme Court was very harsh on this, particularly on consumer forum to establish that there should be an immunity. There should be an immunity for doctors. I am not talking about law. See, if I start talking about the Supreme Court decision, it will be not useful for you. What I'll try to emphasize on, what should we do, what we must do, and what we have to do in long run. I just pulled out an article. See, I'm a policeman. In fact, I'm a policeman. But when I was asked to talk, it was a very interesting article I picked up. The article's title, I just wanted to re-emphasize, "The hands that heal must not bleed." The hands that heal must not bleed. Recommendation to curb the violence against healthcare workers in India. In fact, I was privileged to receive a book, Perils in Practice. This is a must book for all the healthcare professionals. Not only doctors, but also paramedics. Because they are also victims of this kind of, instantaneous violence. What we saw, अरे ऐसे थोड़ी है भाई डॉक्टर सबको बचा लेगा. You can't react like this. I have plethora of examples to explain. In fact, Dr. Mitra has been a victim. Madam has been a victim. I'm sorry, but I am being blunt in telling that you are a victim. So this is where we have to be extremely careful. Now what happens? There are two aspects to curb the violence. One, it is the post-violence. We used to say, if somebody is punished heavily, he learns. But that's only aberration to prove the rule. 3, 4, 5 cases, you handpick, you arrest that fellow, you take stern Indian penal code, you apply strong sections of law, that man remains behind bars, that's fine. But does that solve the problem? When you talk about the solving this problem, particularly a lot of recommendations have come. Even I am not an expert, but it was being recommended in the MBBS course, this soft skills of handling patient, this soft skill of handling depressed people, even the soft skill of handling crowd, this skill. There is a very interesting, I was going through a paper, they said, for personal safety, unarmed combat and all, the health professional, no, I totally disagree with this. Why? You are doing a service to nation. It's also the nation which has the responsibility to protect you at your workplace. So when all these things are taken cognizance of, we have to be very systematic in our approach to ensure that this violence is curbed. Now, I'll come down to a very simple thing. Most of you are medical professionals here. What happens? An incident takes place. The biggest deterrent of a crime is detection of crime. Somebody slapped a doctor in the OPD. My first request to you is inform police. You know there is something called Emergency Response Support System. It is called 112. Now we do not have 100 available. It has been converted to 112. For example, I'll talk about Bhubaneswar and Kanak. My average time of my vehicle, my police vehicle reaching is less than 15 minutes. When we started it, let me tell you, it was 27 minutes. Now over a period of 2 years, I have brought down to less than 14.15 minutes. So this is the first thing one has to do. Number 2, what is our responsibility then? First, control the violence there. 2, take a report from the victim. This is again, I have something to say. In remote areas, ma'am, there are doctors who are even reluctant to submit a report because of the fear of insecurity. In a remote PSC in Badamba, you may have one or two doctors doing shift duty. So what happened? He's scared. आज मेरे report, on my report, a case has been registered. He will come with goons and try to bash me up. So what is important is this matter has to be reported on time, has to be reported strategically, and of course it is our responsibility as policemen to take up the matter immediately. I was going through this amazing book, and it reveals which stakeholders should do what. Which stakeholders should do what. So anyway, I have not even gone through this particular book, but what is important is we have to address to this. Court, including the Supreme Court, has been very, very clear. When people go to consumer forum, when people go to, other forum to get, compensation, to get the doctor punished, I shall just read out a judgment of a Supreme Court. I thought this is essential, madam. Statutory rules of executive instructions incorporating certain guidelines need to be framed and issued by Government of India or the state government in consultation with Medical Council of India. So long as it is not done, we propose to lay down certain guidelines. About SOP, this book speaks very elaborately. Guidelines for the future which should govern the prosecution of doctors for offences of which criminal rashness or criminal negligence is an ingredient. A private complaint may not be entertained unless the complainant had produced prima facie evidences before the court in the form of a credible opinion given by another competent doctor to support the charge of rashness or negligence on the part of accused doctor. Why I cited this is, I have cases, I was discussing with Dr. Mitra, that there is a case which is pending since last 8 or 9 years, wherein the allegation was because of overdose of anesthesia, a patient dies. There was a criminal case under section 304 and this is still under investigation. Now who investigates? A policeman who is basically maybe a graduate or a postgraduate of history, political science or anything. And you expect him to investigate a case which has a lot of technicalities in it. Thanks, as per this SOP, now there is a committee formed by the government and these cases are referred to that committee. And the committee has to finally analyze whether there is a medical negligence or not. So that actually, let me tell you, this is something which was extremely essential. Not just that somebody will go register a case before police and police starts harassing. The doctor who has done the work with full, pure conscience. So now that this is a protection available, but what is the imminent protection available? In one of the recommendations, I shall again reiterate one more thing. In 2019, the Health Ministry, Government of India, drafted Prohibition of Violence and Damage to Property Bill. But what happened? Ministry of Home Affairs did not agree to it. They said there are varieties of law in IPC and special acts which are available to take into action these kind of activities, criminal activities. So this was actually not accepted. But post-COVID, we must be grateful, madam. I remember during that post-COVID scenario, in that Epidemics Act, it was made cognizable. Were arrestable. You still remember during COVID, we arrested so many people who created disturbances in the hospital. So yes, government is careful, but that really does not suffice to contain the violence in the field. This is where we have to work together. We have to work together. Yes, we as policemen, we work reactively. If violence takes place, then we intervene. Then we try to fix that man. But what happens? How to curb this violence? This is very, very important. This is where we, all of us, all the stakeholders have to actually ponder about what is to be done. Like, some people say there is a role of medical education. Why cannot have, how to handle public, how to handle crowd, how to be sensitive to the cause, how to handle a depressed patient, how to handle a patient like who is a victim, who feels as a victim of negligence of doctor. So all these things actually have to be factored in our entire gamut of things. We have to sensitize. The very interesting, somebody suggested that the doctor has to be sensitive enough to apprise the next of kin of the patient about what is the status of health. But let me tell you, let me ask you one question. When you go to a hospital, like for example, government hospital, I was just taking a statistics. Like in Odisha, SCB has the highest footfall per day. It's plus 7,000 plus. Followed by, I don't think all of you will agree or not, it was Capital Hospital. Followed by some hospital, AIMS, where they have 3,000, 2,500 patients gathering during 8 hours of time. We don't have adequate space. You don't have adequate doctors at the casualty. And everyone expects that I should be given priority because to a next of kin, the condition of his next of kin is priority. So that is where the small training, be it for paramedicals, be it for the doctors, is actually required. I think government, sir will agree, I think government is concentrating to add in the MBBS course these soft skills. These soft skills as to how to handle crowd, how to handle a depressed patient, how to communicate, how to handle media, how to handle crowd. So all these things are to be factored in. I think I should stop here because with Dr. Mitra and Madam Gantayat being here, I shall be rather ready to respond to anything that is there because I thought it is not prudent to talk about the law available, what are the sections of law available. See, it is your responsibility. I always say, police is not judiciary. You report an incident to me at the police station. It is the responsibility of station house officer to find out what are the criminal sections that are applicable in such kind of incident. Why should you bother? It is my responsibility as a policeman to tell you if this is a kind of incident reported, this is my sacred duty to respond to the incident. Take action as appropriate as per law. So I really see, you might see papers, you might see lot of things, you might see acts, you have at least 11 Supreme Court judgment explaining since 1995 Supreme Court judgments are available, wherein the recommendations by a consumer forum has been quashed by Supreme Court, wherein the Supreme Court has told the doctors are actually, they have the immunity in this case. I don't have to tell all these things because that is purely the responsibility of judiciary and also the investigating agency. But what is important is the basic SOP. This book has been an amazing book. I just go through this for 5-6 minutes when I was on the table. This is an amazing book which clearly elucidates what is to be done by a medical professional when such kind of incidents. And it is the responsibility of us, let me be very honest with you, one of the recommendation was deployment of adequate police in hospitals. I will ask this August House, do you think it is possible? It's not possible. It's not possible, sir. If you look at the number of hospitals, if you look at the number of government as well as corporate hospitals in Bhubaneswar, I do not have adequate manpower to deploy. And let me tell you one thing, how to decide deployment? It has to be 24/7. Incidentally, most of these incidents are reported in the late night. Because even our medical system is not rich enough to have specialist doctors available at the OPD or at the emergency 24/7. It's not possible. And that is where our doctor friends are victims because they say, why cannot the ECG be done right now? अरे भाई ECG technical, the technician भी तो आना चाहिए. So we have to take a concerted step. It cannot be thought in isolation. I mean, government is already contemplating in the post-COVID scenario that we must come out with a very clear SOP to curb this violence. And let me be very honest with you. It's not that somebody pressurizes us, but for police, the violence against doctors is always taken up on priority. And otherwise, when people go, as we saw in the video, then they come out with a long affair that because of the sheer negligence of this doctor who did not respond to my call, XY's call, my mother died, my father died. And let me be very honest with you, as far as those kinds of affairs are concerned, we are very, very clear about the law or the provisions available. Not that मैं केस करके डॉक्टर मित्रों को बोलूंगा कि अभी तो आपको मैं चौद्वार भेजूंगा. I am, let me be very honest with you, we are very, very clear. We have from State Police Headquarters instructions issued as to how to handle these cases where the doctors or the hospitals are reported against on the so-called imaginative thinking that the doctors are neglected. Let me conclude by telling, which the society has to accept, doctors are like God, but they are not God. Thank you.
The patient and the relatives at that point of time, we are not sensitive enough to handle the issue properly. This is something which has to be brought into our education, in our culture, and in our hospitals. We should have special departments for training our staff to improve on this aspect. By and large, my experience has been that barring certain incidents where there has been a total irrationality, when we fail to communicate properly and we fail to be sensitive enough to the problem which the patient's relatives are facing during a death or some similar issue, that gives rise to the anger, and it invariably or sometimes will ends up in an act of violence. At that point of time, the doctor feels aggrieved because he's got beaten up, is injured, is mentally gone, and is physically also battered. There's a lot of angst the doctor has for the patient, but we should also think that the patient at that point of time, in case of a death, the relatives are also in a bad state of mind. That has to be realized as well, and we have to rebuild the trust which we have lost for each other, in addition to the policing and the law which is available in our country to give us protection. I will now...
Can I just take a minute, madam, with your permission? I shall cite you a very interesting example. You know, when a patient dies, it's a medical legal case, then we have to go for post-mortem. In fact, on 28th, I am going to inaugurate something very interesting in Capital Hospital. So whenever a person dies at some place in a corporate hospital, the corporate hospital refers it to the nearest police station as a medical legal case where a post-mortem is necessitated. Now what happens, the post-mortem centers are usually the government hospitals, medical colleges. Sir, repeatedly I realized, see, I am a local actually, that's why my, first-hand knowledge I used to get. Next of kin dies, being admitted, say for example in Apollo Hospital. The Apollo sends a requisition to Sahid Nagar. Sahid Nagar arranges the dead body to be shifted to the Capital Hospital. A post-mortem is required. The medical legal requirement is before the body is done autopsy with, you have to have Panchanama, what we call as inquest. This has to be done by a local officer. What I realized, sir, the poor next of kin, when he has his close relative dying, has to move around to this thana, that thana, some paper. So let me tell you at this forum, I thought this is an appropriate forum. I decided why not have a single window clearance. We are inaugurating it on 28th, wherein the next of kin has to go to that room. I will have a couple of officers who will facilitate everything so that it can be done. I shall just cite one more example which I discussed with Srivastav Saab. why the role of the hospital administration and healthcare professionals is very important. There is an incident of massive vandalism in Apollo about 8-9 years back. Within these four walls, I must say, here, if you ask me, as an individual, not as a policeman, there were some mistakes in handling of the patients. Like as Dr. Deepak Mitra said, a very, very eminent person, a Padma Shri who died in the night. He has a lot of students outside, about 50, 60 of them outside. Unfortunately, what happened? Without intimating, the dead body was brought down and kept on the floor. These students were disciples. You know, dishonor to Guru is taken very seriously. And then the vandalism came. It is the worst, one of the worst vandalism I have heard of. It's one of the, so that is where the training aspects matters a lot. I'll just close by quoting this healthcare workers training issues, a very interesting paragraph which I just picked up. One of the major deficiencies identified in the medical curriculum is that less importance is given to honing the communication and interpersonal skill, which is most vital for maintaining doctor-patient relationship. I reiterate, don't think I am trying to sign away from my responsibility. No, this is essential. All the stakeholders have to work together. The students neither get training in these skills properly, nor they do have a supervised practical environment to utilize them. Very interesting. Other essential skills that are left out are the ways to deal with difficult patients and emphasize with the distressed patients and their attenders. Time, stress, and conflict management. In the current era, handling the media, sensitization or cultural sensitivity. This is very essential. Cultural sensitivity. Crowd management. And this is very interesting. I think all of you will agree. And treating VIPs without affecting normal services are assumed as much importance as, I repeat, disaster management skill. So, I'm sorry, as a policeman, I should not recommend all this, but holistically, as a common man, I must say, this is the need of the hour. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Actually, these are all very relevant issues we discussed. But one thing which is coming to my mind is that how we have been training the doctors or building their capacity when they're in the curriculum itself, in the MBBS program. So, the leadership skills, the disaster management skills, the team building skills, those are all very important besides, the technical skills. So how we are enriching the curriculum itself to impart those kind of skills while they're in the journey of their academics. That's the question.
Sir,
I think it is for the doctor, sir.
Sir. That's what I wanted to add because, sir, today morning I was, when I was coming out, my wife asked me, what are you going to talk about? Where is your domain knowledge? Then I just raised this point. She made a very pertinent point. बोले आप लोगों को तो इतना सिखाया जाता है, तो आप में से 50% क्यों हैंडल नहीं कर पाते हो? Even being in IPS. So anyway, sir, this is why in a jocular way, I told this because, yes, sir, this is essential. How much one takes, it is his mandate. I think sir and all can answer to his question better than me.
Thank you, Priyadarshi sir, for an excellent deliberation. Maya ma'am and Deepak. I started my practice in 1981 and almost 20 days in a month, I had a night-time call to some locality person. Many of them also died in our hand. We could not, because there are no ICUs then. Referring to hospitals was difficult, but there was no violence. We treated them sincerely, tried our best, 4 hours, 3 hours, and then patient succumbed. and nobody blamed us. All these blaming games started after 2000 when corporate hospitals started coming. There are two reasons. People got very good treatment and people had to empty their purse. Emptying the purse was the first cause of irritation than the treatment difficulty. Then the consumer law came and people thought life is guaranteed if I am paying, which is not a fact. Life is not guaranteed. With the best treatment, 80% people may survive and 20% will die. And nobody who has paid Apollo 3 lakhs or 5 lakhs to Amri he's not ready to accept that his patient will die even he is 89 years. So, age, sickness has taken a back seat and money, other things have taken a forefront. In my hospital, also kids hospital, like Maya Ma'am's or Apollo, many times our front glass doors have been broken. But thanks to Commissionerate Police, for last 5 years, that has been stopped by taking stern action against local hooligans. So, this is a joint problem of both doctors and patients and the administration. If you communicate with the patient properly and every day, morning and afternoon, you counsel their key person about the status of the patient, this violence will come down. So as Priyadarshi sir has rightly told, educating doctors and paramedics to handle such proactively such situations is of paramount importance.
Sir, can I add, sir? You very rightly pointed about, I will not fully agree that the onset of too many corporate hospitals. No, sir. The second important problem is the media. Now, sir, media can aggravate any simple case to unimaginable complications. Now, what happens? The public opinion is built on the basis of the media. So, there is a sense of aversion created against individual corporate hospitals. So, that is why, sir, as he pointed out, during the curriculum, and see, sir, when we do our mid-career training and other things, or for example, I try to do some training imparted to my officers in Commissionerate Police, one of the major things I try to focus is how to handle media. Now, sir, what happens? A patient dies or is an important fellow, he dies, say for example, he's in critical condition. Now, so many media will try to congregate before the hospital, the front door of the hospital. Now, what happens? I should not say madam has been victim for the last 2 days. Anyway, madam. No, madam. I shouldn't say victim, but you know what happened. So, what happens? Now, when these people come, this is one thing I must apprise to all the corporate hospital friends, the leaders. From hospital sites, there is no communication. And these people try to get communication from patients who picturize hospital in the worst scheme of things. So this opinionation, this opinion building, which continues, finally take that hospital, like what Dr. Kanongo says, I'll only agree in small fraction. You are talking about if money can save the life, you all agree, at least Dr. Kanongo knows, we spent a couple of crores, I repeat, a couple of crores in case of 2 very important patients, but could not save their life. So if money can save that life, then log amar ho jayenge. The big is will be. So my question is, this is where I appeal to all of you, even in today's parlance, when media plays a very pivotal role, handling media, communicating with media. I still remember when Jayalalitha ma'am died and how that news comes out from Apollo. That was amazing. New health bulletin. So it may be for big people. But what happens? Let it not be bulletin. Let, as Dr. Kanongo said, that communication with the next of kin is very important, and if required, maybe this thing should be leaked to the press, or maybe right on the face of press, so that this whole thing do not get aggravated. Thank you.
Kind of death or some patient becomes serious in ICU, media actually all the media partners are here. So my request is, please don't make it a scrolling news. Doctors are not villains. And like ma'am suggested, we can have a small committee which can be directly in touch with media in such situations and for day-to-day interactions. Maybe that will make us more presentable and we'll be able to explain ourselves more, because every time it may not be possible that in the middle of the night a patient dies and the particular doctor may be present to explain the things. So if you have, we develop such a system, ma'am is here and all. So on behalf of ICC, if we can develop a system which will be in directly touch with the media, so we can prevent such situations.
I think the whole forum cannot agree more. With the media friends available, man, this is something. What happened, sir? We had a session. We in Commissioner Police try to work on suicide prevention. Suicide has been major menace. Sir, we requested Dr. Soumitra Pathare, the Indian Law Society. He is called the authority on suicide. So he has been kind enough to visit my office, my setup 5 times in last 1 year. We have signed a memorandum of understanding. So media friends are there. He had a session with our media friends. And he very clearly apprised, at times glorifying suicides is also an inciter. It incites committing suicide. So this is very essential, as you rightly pointed out. I think my media friends will totally agree with the opinion formed here, and we should work together on that. Thank you.
Yeah, working on behalf of ICC, we'll definitely organize a